Hello, everyone. So, I am continuing on with my skeleton theme here, and this is going to be the next one up. This is the Ringo Toy Company Scientific Educator Kit Brontosaurus. That's a mouthful. I think this may also have originally been Parmer and maybe ITC. From what I've looked up, this may have first been produced in 1959, I think by ITC or Palmer, and then later in 1967, I think they came out with this box. So I think this is going to have some of the same challenges as I've had with some of the Glencoe kits, because later Glencoe goes to produce the, I guess, with the same molds, the same kits that Palmer did. So we're going to see. So this is the next adventure. Let's see what it's about. So let's go ahead and unbox this. This, of course, 1967 kit I got off of eBay. So, as often they are, it's pretty beat up, kind of dusty too here. So let's see what all's in here. Looks like we've got an information sheet about our Brontosaurus here. I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's now called a Patosaurus. It does have this nice little map of the parts, which that's good. Always like to see that. You didn't usually see too many of these in the 60s, but this one apparently has it. So that's good. Now, I may not take all the parts out of bags because they're kind of loose, and we'll get to that in a minute. Here are the instructions, such as they are. Starts with the tail assembly, legs, more legs. Is this the tail assembly? Yeah, tail assembly. The head and neck and vertebrae. Now, it does have, and I'll show it in a second, it does have this wire. And it talks about head wire and neck assembly. So we're going to look at that wire in a minute. And then it has the last page where you put it all together. I'm pretty sure this is originally Palmer because it's got one of these bases on it. And these bases have the nameplate built into them. And I also have this thing. I don't know what this thing is supposed to be. It's on the Tyrannosaurus and what's the other one I've got? The Stegosaurus. They both have this thing, and I don't know what that's about. It's, to me, it serves no purpose, but there it is. It's, I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of this kind of thick line with rounded corners on it. I don't know. I'm seeing some, I guess these are where the feet go, and this may be where the tail goes. Anyway, I like having bases, and I really like nameplates, but I really wish the nameplate was a separate piece. It would be so much easier to deal with, because now I've got to mask all of this off when I go to paint it. It's a pain. All right, so we've got some parts here, some runners. And I've been doing some research here. There's a difference between a runner and a sprue. The sprue is kind of where the plastic gets injected, and these pieces that run off to the parts are called the runners, and the point where the runner connects to the part is called the gate. And then there's some things called, I believe they're cold runners, where you have excess plastic that runs off. So, and these have, the part numbers are on these little circles here. They're really teeny tiny. They're not, normally you see part numbers on the runners, but they're not. They're on these little tiny, teeny tiny circles that you have to eventually cut off. Not a fan of that. Of course, in 1959, they were, the plastic model kits were still kind of a new thing. Let's see here. We do have some loose parts. I hope I have all the parts. I will do a parts inventory when I go to clean these. And I'm not going to take all these parts out of the bag. In fact, I'm going to put these in here. I just don't want to lose these parts. Given that this is a kit from 1967, it's going to be hard to replace these parts. But there's this wire or rod, metal rod, that I believe you're supposed to bend it however you want the neck to go, because I think this is for the neck vertebrae. So we're going to get to find out about that. So anyway, I'm not going to go into all the parts here, but I am going to inventory them as I go ahead and clean the parts. So that is the unboxing of our Ringo Toy Company Brontosaurus. In the injection molding process, a release agent is often used to release the parts from the mold. Now, that can be a problem because if that release agent remains on your parts, it could get in the way of your paint job. I've heard that modern kits don't use that quite so much, but you can't take any chances. I'm pretty sure that in 1967, when this kit was produced, they probably were using a release agent. So I don't take any chances on every kit that I do. I have a process for cleaning that release agent off, and that involves first squirting everything down with Windex, wiping the Windex off, and then squirting everything down with water and then wiping that off. And I haven't had any problems with my paint job. Maybe I need it, maybe I don't. But again, I'm not going to take any chances. All right. This was an important thing to do, process-wise, was to inventory the parts. And I'm glad that they gave me this map to go off of. And I think to the best of my ability, I've been able to correlate the parts I have to the map that I've got. And I think I've got all the parts. So I didn't see anything that was missing. This was kind of a quick and dirty parts inventory, but I think I've got everything. So next step is with the parts clean and inventoried. The next step is going to be assembly. So let's let the parts dry and then we'll get on to that. The first step in the instructions is the tail assembly, and it's got 6 parts to it. So, of course, you've got to cut the parts off. The sprues, I like using the Testors hobby knife that has the blade built into a plastic handle. I just like the feel of that one. There are others out there that you could use. You could also probably use some sprue snips. I have occasionally used those, but most of the time I just use the knife. I just put the knife right up to the edge of whatever I'm cutting, and that does pretty good. Maybe you get occasional spur, but those are easy to scrape off. Also, the knife is good for clearing off any flashing, or sometimes you'll get mold lines. So again, I do like the Testors knife. Uh, for cement, I'm using Tamiya, just the regular Tamiya cement, not the thin set or quick set or what have you. Just the regular one with the orange cap, because I'm not trying to quickly set it. It's okay for me if it has, stays clamped for a little bit. Speaking of clamps, I do have some clips that came with a Tamiya little spinning stand that you used like when you're spray painting or airbrushing. So I've got some clips from that. And for clamps, actual clamps, I like to use these Hyper Tough clamps that I got at Walmart, especially the 4-inch ones. I've been really pleased with them. And they're like, I don't know, maybe certainly less than $10 a piece, maybe more like $7. But it's one of my go-to clamping tools. Highly recommend it. So once I've got the tail assembled, then I went in and did some puttying with gaps. I generally use the Vallejo plastic putty. I like this particular putty because it comes with a little nozzle so you can direct where the putty goes. It's also water soluble, so once I put the putty in place, then I can take a damp cloth and smooth it down, so I don't have to come back and do a bunch of sanding and filing later on. So anyway, let's move on to the next assembly. Next up, I'm going to tackle steps 2 and 3, which are the front leg assemblies. I would recommend doing some test fitting on these because the fit's not super great. I don't like the way they did the connections on these, but you have to consider that given that this was designed in the 1950s and plastic model kits were kind of at their infancy, the model kit engineering isn't where it is today. So definitely, if you're doing this kit, you want to do some test fitting, and there will definitely be putting of gaps going on here. So now moving on to steps 4 and 5, which are the rear legs. Pretty much what I'm seeing here is, again, more gap filling at the joints. I'll say it again. I really don't like how they did these connections. They're very gappy. Step 6 is the head wire and neck assembly, which has this wire that comes with the kit that you take some pliers and bend a little circle into on one end and bend up the at an angle the other end to fit into the spinal cord. And there's a whole bunch of vertebrae in between the head and the spinal cord, and to give it kind of a realistic pose, you might want to bend it, a little bit more and give it a little bit of a curve. This is problematic, to say the least. There's I there's a lot of gaps that have to get filled between the vertebra, and it's 1950s model kit engineering, and it shows. Step 7 is the sacral vertebrae assembly, where you're connecting part of the spine to the tail, and there's some side pieces to the spine, and then the left and right rear legs. So this has a little bit of puttying that needs to be done, but I I think it could have been engineered better. It's kind of tricky to get the parts to fit in just right. So again, as I've said before, 1950s model kit engineering. The last part, part 8, the thoracic vertebra section, was probably the most frustrating on this kit, because the fit's not great, and getting all the legs and the hips and shoulder joints all together to play nice was kind of a problem. And I will admit, to a certain degree, I was coming close to the end and kind of like wanting to get there, and the pieces, probably because I was rushing, and that's nobody's fault but my own, the pieces wouldn't stay in place long enough. So I really had to resort to do a piece, let it set, and let the cement harden, and then do the next piece, let the cement set, then do the next piece. So it's one of those things, and it's so true in model making, that you have to be patient. You can't rush things sometimes as much as you want to, as much as you're excited about getting it done. You kind of have to go through the process. So anyway, finally got all the thoracic vertebrae section done. I've primed this with Tamiya pink surface primer. I've never used a pink primer before, so this is an experiment. My understanding is that the pink primers are actually good for helping yellows pop out. So we're going to see what this does. Now, for the base coat, I'm going to do a mix of Vallejo model color cream white with just a little bit of Vallejo model color old rose. I want to kind of go with kind of a pink quartzy kind of feel. At least that's my thinking right now. So let's get into that and see what that does. So I've gotten the first base coat done, and I had kind of in mind that I was going to end up doing at least 2 base coats. Normally you just do 1, but because this is so thin what I applied, I can clearly see the pink primer showing through, and I kind of expected that to happen. So I'm going to do a second base coat. I'm going to continue to use the Vallejo model color cream white and the Vallejo model color old rose. I'm going to add to that the Vallejo model color pale sand. So, and I think I'm also going to, let me grab it here, going to use a little bit of Vallejo model color pale brown as well. So that's where we're going next. Next, I'm going to do some stippling with a really stiff brush. and with a variety of colors. Probably doing these one at a time. And I think what I'm going to use, I'm going to go back to the cream white, the model color cream white, and I'm probably going to use the model color pale brown, model color deck tan, and model color old rose. So I'll be doing those a little bit at a time. I may mix them together, I don't know, but those are the colors I'm going to use. Let's see what happens. After doing the stippling, some of the colors were a little bit stronger than I'd like for the final paint job, so I'm going to go over it with a light wash, and I'm going to use, once again, the Vallejo model color cream white, but I'm going to mix that with some Tamiya XF57 buff and see if I can tone that down a little bit. After that, I'll probably go over it with a dark wash and then a dry brushing with a light color again, maybe again the cream white, and to get us to the finish line here. So let's see how this works out. The next thing I'm going to do is a wash to get into kind of the cracks and crevices and give us some contrast with the lighter colors. So I'm going to use Vallejo model color leather brown and Vallejo model color Calvary brown, which is actually a little more reddish. So I'm going to mix those together and do a very thin wash just so I can get some of those details in the cracks and crevices. Getting down to the end of the paint job, what I want to do next is some dry brushing just to hit the highlights. So I'm going to use Vallejo model color ivory, Vallejo model color cream white, and maybe just a tiny touch of the Vallejo model color old rose, just a teeny tiny touch, and hopefully that should get us to the finish line here. I love getting nameplates with these model kits, the ones that come with it, because when you get it painted up, it's like having your own personal prehistoric museum at home. I also like getting the bases that are kind of make it like a little mini diorama. What I don't care so much for is when the nameplate is built into the base, as is the case with this one. The reason being is you've got to mask, get stuff off, and it's just a pain. So because this has the nameplate built into it, I'm going to have to alter my process that I usually do for nameplates. So for this one, I've got to, now that I've got it painted, I'm going to mask off the base so I don't mess up the paint job that I did on the base. And once I've got it masked off, then I'm going to go over it with a few coats of Vallejo model color brass. I really like that one because it really, to me, seems like the right color for a nameplate that you might see in a museum. So after probably 3 or so coats of that, I'm then going to give it a couple of coats of the Tamiya clear spray paint. And that's the gloss. It doesn't say gloss, but it is the gloss. So I'm going to do 2 coats of that. And then I'm going to tape off the brass parts around the edges because I think it just make a better presentation. And once I have that taped off, then I'm going to give probably about another 4 coats of that Tamiya clear. And then once I've done the Tamiya clear and that's dried, I'm going to go over it with the Tamiya semi-gloss black. And I think that makes a really good background. So probably a couple of coats of the Tamiya semi-gloss black, and once that's dry, I'm going to take some isopropyl alcohol and some Q-tips, and very carefully, and when you do this, you've got to, once you dip the Q-tip, you've got to kind of squeeze out the excess, but very carefully brush that over the letters, and that'll eventually reveal the letters underneath the black. And that's what I've found so far to be the best approach for doing these nameplates. Once that's all dry, I will remove the masking tape, and then it should be done. All right, so this Ringo Toy Company Brontosaurus kit is completed. So it's a big kit. I think this is like 18 inches long or something like this. This is not a tiny kit. It's long. My Aurora Prehistoric Scenes T-Rex over there, of course, is a much bigger kit, but this is definitely long. So as I've mentioned before, this is 1950s model kit engineering going on here, and I can tell the way that parts go together could be better. It can be gappy at times. The piece of rod or wire that goes through the neck that you have to put a little loop in to go inside the head and bend it on the other end to go inside the body. I know they kind of made this for kids, but kids would have a hard time with this. So not the best of model kit engineering. That being said, otherwise it went all right. I tried the pink primer. I think it worked out for this, but I think it has selective uses. I'll show this. I did get the nameplate done. Not my best nameplate job, and that's mostly me to blame for that. I got in a rush when trying to do the nameplate, and it kind of shows. I think for the future, I should have let the black paint dry longer. I shouldn't have been in such a rush, and that's, I think all model makers deal with that, where you're excited to get it done and then you rush things and then you mess it up. I am definitely guilty of that. Now, that being said, I think the lettering on the nameplate could have been a little bigger and a little thicker, raised up from the surface of the background a little better. But ultimately, I rushed it, so it's on me. So anyway, let's get it all back together here. The tail is supposed to fit in there, but it's supposed to fit in this groove, but mine kind of swings out away from if you can see here, it swings out away from this little channel that it's supposed to go in. I'm not going to stress over that. I don't know if that's a flaw of the kit or possibly a flaw of my model building, but it's got a lot of play in the connections and in the joints. So if I had it to build again, I might know to look for that next time. So anyway, here it is, the Ringo Toy Company Brontosaurus. I'm going to continue on with the skeleton theme. I've got a few more skeleton kits to build, so stay tuned and we'll have further adventures.